When he finally wakes up, he has no clue where he is. But then it suddenly strikes him. He stands in the dusty heart of a slave arena. His opponent is a huge, crazy brute called Butcher. The whole crowd goes wild with excitement for this hungry fighter. Before we even could blink, Butcher towered over us, swinging his giant hammer down with all his might. The crowd goes wild thinking the fight is done. But once the noise fades, Butcher stares in shock at what he just saw. Our MC stands safely atop his hammer while already pouring magic into his sword. Before Butcher can even move, he jumps forward with incredible speed and delivers one final hit, leaving his motionless body falling to the ground behind him. The whole arena is chanting our guy's name, while the wealthy fans who lost their money betting on him lose all hope. But who exactly is this man? And how did such a master swordsman wind up fighting in a slave arena? After the cruel demons pushed the humans into their last safe haven in Ale City, they swept through and killed every single one of them. Colin Hall is the last human left standing, and even he is worn out from everything he has survived. He has fought as the world's greatest swordsman against these demons, but even his mighty strength can no longer turn the tide, especially when the demon mocking him right in front of him gloats that he is the only one left alive. At the same time, it recognizes his efforts in its own warped way by rewarding him with the terrifying freedom to pick how he wants to die. As the tired man watches his hard work crumble, his thoughts wander back to the very start of this terrible dream. It's been a year since demons crashed onto our world without warning, marching easily through our weak cities and into the capital while our magicless soldiers fought bravely but hopelessly against monsters who could cast spells, a power that has always been locked away just for the nobles. These nobles always think they are the heroes destined to save humanity, but their weak and untrained magic is far too slow to even catch the low-ranking demons. Colin remembers the forbidden magic book he finally found, which let anyone use magic no matter who they were, but he wishes he'd found it sooner because things could have changed completely if he had it back then. As the tale jumps back to now, the demon asks him one more time how he wants to die. He casually suggests cutting off his limbs or burning him up until nothing is left, but Colin refuses to give in and simply tells the demon to shut up. He then charges at the demon for one last desperate fight, only to have his blow easily blocked as if it meant nothing. Colin quickly stands up and aims his sword at the demon's heart, but the demon pulls back just in time and laughs, saying a simple sword fight can't beat him. Just as the demon is about to keep mocking, he suddenly feels pain and realizes Colin has finally struck him. Colin admits that his normal sword skills would be useless in a fight like this. As the boy realizes his blade steals the life it destroys, he charges the demon again, matching its every strike in a fierce battle that lasts until he finds the perfect moment to strike. In one quick flash, he severs the demon's hand. In that very instant, the monster's rage boils over. Burning with rage, the demon sneered at the legendary blade and snatched it out of the air with his bare hands, never even hesitating. He tells the boy that using that trick as a surprise attack earlier could have changed everything, but now the boy is unlucky to have wasted his only chance by smashing the blade into pieces. The demon leaves no time for him to heal and blasts him away with a burst of fire. Colin crashes onto the ground and clenches his teeth in agony, realizing this wasn't enough to stop the demon, who instantly closes in, snatches him by the collar and lifts him effortlessly while mocking him for taking one arm and losing everything else. Standing on the edge of death, Colin begs his friends to forgive him for breaking his promise. Just as the demon strikes him one more time, leaving his body soaked in blood. As the dripping blood soaks into the forbidden book, something inside it finally comes to life. The MC wakes up alive, looks around in a daze, and asks himself where he is. Suddenly, a strange voice made him spin around to see what it called out. There he finds the forbidden magic book, now speaking right to him. It tells the MC that his blood has awakened, so as a favor, it will send him back in time to get another chance to fix everything. The MC instantly squeezes his fist, thrilled to hear about regression since it was always his deepest dream. He calls it the chance of a lifetime and grabs the offer without even a second thought. The book feels happy and promises to stay by his side, teaching him magic until he can send the demons back home. Suddenly, pages fly out of the book and swirl around him before it snaps shut in the hands of a mysterious stranger. And just as he changes back, the scene jumps to a roaring arena where the crowd is shouting for their hero, the Butcher. The main character looks all around, totally puzzled by how he's suddenly holding a sword and a shield. Trying to figure out where he is in this slave arena, he suddenly realizes he has truly traveled back in time, and hearing the crowd roar, he knows he just got hit by the famous Butcher but somehow survived. Viscount Thrace, the owner of this slave arena, twirls his mustache and looks down on the commoners, seeing them only as tools to make him money. He sees these people as nothing more than cheap amusement for the rich, treating them like disposable pawns with no real worth. As the fight heats up and the crowd cheers for the Butcher, the Viscount watches with excitement, sure that Colin is just an easy target for his perfect plan, but instead of getting crushed, our hero cleanly dodges the attack and lands with one foot firmly on the big guy's weapon. At this moment, Colin was stuck in the arena as a slave gladiator with no way out. But something had changed because the boy finally realized he could use magic. He begins to suspect the magic book has merged with his body, so he fights back and takes his first real step toward changing his fate. Colin dashes forward with just a few swift, clean slashes and cuts the butcher's head off in one big, final blow. He decides to learn the book's magic, knowing he must save humanity from the demons this time. As he looks at the men who set up this slave fight, he realizes that in his current spot, even dreaming about changing everything is just a joke. Knowing this, he chooses to take it one step at a time. His very first move is to step back into the Hall family, reclaiming the name Colin Hall just like he did before. RMC remembers his past life, where he was forced to lose this very fight. The ordinary folk had all wagered on him to beat the nobles' champion, the butcher. While Viscount Thrace intends to sacrifice Colin merely to entertain the nobles above, RMC hopes this moment will grab the attention of Marquis Darius Hall, the Lord of the Line, and help him join the family sooner. With that in mind, he shamelessly laughs at the useless management and daringly tells them to send the next fighter his way, while Viscount Thrace gets scolded by the nobles for letting them bet big on the butcher, who is now dead. Viscount fights to keep his cool, pretending everything is still on track so the angry nobles will calm down. On the other side, Marquis Darius shows a clear interest in Colin and asks his butler, Cornell, to give his take on the final strike. Cornell admits the slash was incredibly powerful, far exceeding what he'd expect from an imperial soldier. The Marquis watched with deep interest as the bold boy ignored the Viscount's orders without a second thought. Back at the VIC count, he's failing to calm the furious nobles who believe the boy will be torn apart in the next round. But his shaky lies and fake confidence crumble instantly when Colin knocks out the next opponent before he even steps into the arena. Cornell and Marquarius lean in with growing excitement as 6 gladiators charge at Colin, reminding him that he once dreamed of a world where magic was free for all, a promise he failed to keep in his past life. This time, he vows to himself that he will make it happen no matter what. Knowing that knocking out a few fighters won't get him into the Marca family, the boy shouts loudly for them to attack him all at once. Suddenly, gladiators rush in from all sides to trap him, but Colin dodges every blow with quick steps and leaps into the air, ready to strike back with his sword. As he hits the ground, he instantly takes down 3 of his enemies by slicing through their necks in one smooth, deadly motion. Then he flips his weapons around, brings down 2 more foes and keeps his speed up. He locks eyes with the last gladiator standing and effortlessly hurls his blade forward. The sword flies straight through the man and keeps going, brushing past the Viscount's hair before sticking into the wall right behind him. Thrace breaks out in a cold sweat from the near-miss strike, his face twisting with rage and shame as he vows silently to make the boy pay for this. Now that he sees the whole board, the Marquis laughs right in the Viscount's face for getting tricked by his own plan. The other nobles instantly jump to the Viscount's side to argue with Darius Hall, insisting that lowly slaves like him should never be allowed to act freely, with some even demanding Collins's execution, which makes the Marquis's expression turn serious. The air grows heavy and tight as he angrily scolds them for still looking down on the poor. The Viscount's anger grows as he openly mocks the Marquis, calling their beliefs foolish. He reminds him that God gave magic to people 1,000 years ago, creating a rule where nobles were seen as his chosen messengers. He lifts his staff to blast the sign, but pauses to wonder if he really wants to break the rules. Hearing this, Collins jumps in and escalates the heated argument, calmly blinking and taking a seat among the nobles as if he belongs there, which sends panic through the crowd as they shout for divine guards, while Colin directly challenges Thrace, pointing his sword at him to prove if he truly believes he is an agent of God. The challenge is taken, both sides step into the arena, and all the nobles are sure the Viscount will easily crush the bug before him. They watch with happy grins while Darius looks noticeably on edge. Viscount Thrace steps up first, hurling insults as he waves his hand to unleash a spell that summons the wind. Just as the spell starts to form, Colin hears the magic book whispering in his mind and sees a panel pop up showing Thrace's stats, revealing that the arrogant Viscount is really just a beginner mage with way more pride than power. Thrace casts Wind Edge, a spell that slices through everything in its way. The nobles burst into laughter and start betting on just how many pieces Colin's body will end up in. Some say 7 pieces while others claim 8. But the Viscount stands proud in front of the Marquis to show everyone the clear difference between a noble and a slave. While the Viscount's powerful wind slashes tear through Colin's shirt, the boy stands calm and unharmed because he can resist magic. So he simply walks right through the attack to reach Thrace and leaves everyone watching in shock. The Viscount rushes to pull his sword, but Colin hits him before the blade comes free, knocking it right out of his hand and sending it flying. He presses his sword to the noble's throat to end the fight, and right then the magic system sparks again, telling the MC that a brand new kind of magic has just appeared. Shadowy hands burst up from the dirt and squeeze the boy until he can't move. Divine guards have arrived to cast magic after hearing a report that a slave insulted the nobles. Just by being there, they feel huge and instantly say they are here to take the suspect away. After spotting the divine guards, Colin knows he's in deep trouble because they work for the Magic Tower, a powerful group that enforces bloodline supremacy and keeps the weak under the strict control of nobles. The MC realizes these guards aren't just elite nobles, but warriors so powerful they easily outmatch regular royalty. He quickly figures out the binding magic is weak enough for him to break, but he holds back so no one notices. So instead of trying to break free, he makes a bold move by shouting that he is the son of Marquis Darius Hall and demanding they stop the magic right then. When they heard this, both the Holy Guardians and Viscount looked on in total confusion. As whispers spread that the Marquis never had another son, Colin stays calm, betting everything on the idea that divine guards won't touch true nobility. Thrace cannot stand it that anyone would drag the noble name through the mud just to save their own skin. As punishment, he vows to bring swift justice with his sword right here and now. Suddenly, a loud voice booms out to everyone in the arena. It is Lord Darius's home, a place where people stop dead in their tracks just at the sight of him, even as the Viscountly tells the elegant lord he was only putting an end to a sinner's wretched life. Suddenly, the Marquis whips across Colin's face, and he screams that a lowly slave has no right to tarnish his noble family name. Even the godlike guards are shocked, having briefly believed he meant to help. Thrace stands there looking like a complete fool, totally lost and unable to make sense of what's happening right in front of him. Suddenly, the Mary Kay lunges and squeezes our boy in a tight hold, declaring that a little hard work in the Merchant Guild will finally knock him back to his senses. Our hero stays quiet while the Marquis's thick gloves squeeze tighter around his neck. Marquis Darius is furious that he first insulted Thrace and then dared to draw a sword against the noble, while Colin remains completely calm. Everything was falling into place just as he had dreamed it would. Once he finishes his act, the Marquis steps forward to offer a formal apology to Viscount Thrace for what his son did. Thrace's tiny brain struggles to figure out exactly when they became father and son. Colin shyly replies that he can't be blamed, because the Viscount was the one who insulted his father first. Daddy Darius quickly tells his son to keep quiet. He then promises the heavenly guards that he will personally teach his son a hard lesson. He waves them away, showing them they have no place here anymore. But the Viscount isn't backing down at all. He won't let anyone, not even a giant sign with silly jokes, try to take his top slave away from him. With red, angry eyes, he threatens to kill Colin with his own hands while pointing his sword right at the Lord to show he means business. Our boy giggles as the fool checks himself. Thrace has just turned his weapon against the Lord of Line's own lands. By that same thinking, he has openly disobeyed the orders of both the Lord and the whole Divine Guard. Colin tells the sack of bones that he has just committed high treason right before everyone. His sharp words froze Thrace mid-sentence, leaving the old man hanging there, speechless, right in the middle of the arena. With the crowd watching, the noble is left shaking in fear after being destroyed. Yet the divine captain decides it was all just a misunderstanding, removes Colin's restraints, and even offers a formal apology for the big scene. Next, he turns to Thrace and promises to file a complete report on everything that happened at the Magic Tower himself. Thrace drops to his knees in terror, knowing that a group of leaders will soon decide his fate. Our hero finally lets out a slow breath of relief, while the captain of the Divine Guard, who isn't easily fooled, quietly warns his men that Colin seems suspicious and must be investigated. An innocent subordinate wonders why they are investigating the Marquis of Lean's son, but the captain replies that it's impossible for anyone to miss his famous father. He looks annoyed at the obvious lie and is set on proving the boy isn't the Marquis' son. While his team thought it odd that Colin stood firm even when held back, they now believe he has a secret link to the Marquis who always shows up to save him. Even though the captain can't explain everything yet, he tells his crew to keep a close eye on the suspect. Then the view shifts to a carriage rolling through a green forest, where the Marquis laughs with joy at Colin's amazing performance in the heat of the moment. After a short quiet moment, Colin spoke up to say how truly grateful he was to the Marquis for keeping him alive. Just after the fight, the Lord rushed his man Cornell out to grab Colin before anyone else could get there. The Marquis's eyes light up with real curiosity about his combat skills, noting how his sharp gaze instantly sees that Colin moves with the smooth, deadly precision of a true veteran. Our hero looks down and lets his mind wander back into the past. He says that when his parents passed away, his very own village sold him into slavery while he was still just a little boy. Years later, a kind noble bought him, taught him simple magic, and trained him to fight real battles. His eyes overflow with emotion as he tells them the noble man was like a father to him. Once the nobleman was gone, the man handed over a dream he'd always wanted to live but never could. Colin's eyes burn with fierce determination as he vows to do anything, even sacrifice his life, to make that dream come true. His stubborn determination completely catches Lord Darius off guard, since he never expected such a powerful and honest reply. What really catches the Marquis's attention is how Colin survived the Viscount's deadly wind slash using nothing but his simple magic tricks. Darius is deeply awed by the unbreakable spirit of a man who became a gladiator by surviving the toughest years of his life. In that instant, he finally sees our hero as the only one worthy of his life's mission, and the thought is so heavy that he falls quiet for a moment. Cornell pulls him out of his trance to tell him they've finally made it to their destination. Marquis Darius's mansion is a stunning sight, a huge work of art standing tall in the middle of a garden that only the richest nobles could ever own. As he steps out of the carriage, the Lord calmly tells Colin that he is now a free man. Even though he's free from anyone else, he still has to take care of what he's responsible for. They live in a harsh world where only the toughest survive and every person has to fight just to belong. Darius spins around and flatly tells Colin that he's done babysitting him, leaving Colin to prove he can survive the tough life of hard work that now awaits him. Our boy stays calm and steady, showing no fear for whatever challenges come his way. Marquis Darius says he has big hopes for what's in store for him later on. He calls him Colin Hall to officially welcome him as his adopted son, marking the end of his long journey home. In this world, nobles almost never marry below their rank because standing must always match standing. Or else their bloodline gets poisoned and their power fades away, which is why the Hall family is so obsessed with keeping their family pure. Yet standing apart from the rest is Lord Darius Hall. Unlike everyone else, he refuses to believe this noble lie because he was born an outcast child to a maid, and from the moment he arrived, the world treated him as less than everyone else. Whispers chased him down every hallway, but he didn't crumble. Instead, he used his talent to break the bias and climbed all the way to become the leader of the Line territory. As he strolls through the grand halls with Colin, he calmly shares that a man's past means nothing, because only strength and skill truly matter. Darius tells Colin plainly that fame, wealth, and power are within reach, but they won't come for free. If Colin wants them, he must prove his talent by pouring his heart and soul into every single thing he does. Hearing that he can keep whatever he earns, Colin doesn't hesitate and boldly asks if he can get a noble title too. The question makes the Lord and his butler pause, breaking their rhythm for a second. Even Darius Hall didn't see the ambition coming. Then the Marquis bursts into hearty laughter, and instead of taking offense, he finds his directness amusing. So with a warm grin, he challenges Colin to take his title if he wants it so badly. That answer was just like Colin knew the man would say. Darius believes in earning his place instead of inheriting it, a trait that sets him apart in his family but also earns him their bitter hatred as his rivals with no talent can't stand him blocking their path to power. Because of this, his worst enemies are actually the people right next to him. Yet his own family laughs at his surprise as his son and wife happily welcome him home, joking that they always hear about his travels and even his fights before he arrives. Lord Darius Hall looks at her with icy, hateful eyes. She smiles back with a mischievous glint, pretending to be the innocent victim who didn't do anything. Darius quietly watches the servants serving her, knowing they are actually snakes in disguise who report his every move behind his back. Colin glares at the woman, who is Daru's nearest ally yet his most dangerous secret foe. For in a past life she was the reason he failed his life's mission, became a victim of her plots after killing her husband, and remains the sole heir to her family's great wealth. That's why she wields the power of a first wife even though she's technically second, driven only by the goal of making her son, Freed Hall, the next head of House Hall after she manipulated him in his past life. But this time he refuses to let history repeat itself. With blazing confidence, he steps forward and says that meeting Lady Katrina Hall and Big Brother Freed is a true honor. Then, with a loud and proud voice, he introduces himself as Colin Hall and promises to pour every drop of his strength into making the House of Hall even stronger. Hearing a commoner use our family name so boldly leaves Freed Hall standing there, completely speechless. Just as he gets ready to insult Colin in front of everyone, his mother snaps her fingers to silence him and decides to handle the job herself, expressing disgust at the idea of a commoner staining her noble family name. Lady Katrina turned to Cornell and asked the butler if this new servant needed to be taught manners and respect from scratch. Cornell wisely stays quiet to avoid upsetting anyone, but then everyone is stunned as our boy raises his sword high, declaring that the name fits him perfectly since the head of House Hall gave it to him, and he presses them by asking if they plan to defy a choice from the Lord himself, even adding with a mocking smile that they should remember his name well because one day he will take the title of Lord and leave them far behind. Katrina glares with scorn at the peasant for his foolish words, while her son Freed all rages so violently, he looks like he might punch a hole right through the wall. Lord Darius Hall heard a song in Colin's angry words. The servants at the back start to mutter quietly among themselves. To them, it's laughable to think a former slave could ever become the head of the family. Lady Katrina coughs quietly to stop the whispers from growing louder. Within seconds, every servant in the room falls silent. She bites her lip in frustration, ordering Colin to know his place and keep his worthless mouth shut, then commands her servants to restrain him at once. The butlers pull out their hidden swords while the maids grab their brooms to fight back. Just before things get out of hand, Lord Darius calls for a quick break. He tells us that Colin is being honest and that if he can prove himself worthy, he will earn the title of Lord. Freed is confused and asks what that would entail, but Lord Darius just answers with an angry stare. Lady Katrina agrees with the Lord's choice but explains that the Darius family keeps their servants humble, giving names only to the few they trust most. She finds it ridiculous to let a stranger like him take on that name. She says they can't just take this in their stride. Lady Katrina suggests they put the boy to the test to see if he is truly worthy, warning that if he fails, he must leave their home just like his ancestors before him. Our boy shakes his head and tells her nothing will stop him, which makes the noble lady angry and wondering if he is giving up on the challenge. Colin says everyone who serves should take the same test so each person has a fair shot at earning the special name. As he mocks Freyr, he argues that choosing the next lord by skill rather than just family connections would be far better. Hearing that, Fried felt humiliated for the very first time. He slips into denial, wondering how the only son could possibly compete with common servants for the crown. Suddenly, Katrina places her hand on her son's shoulder and reminds him that as a noble, he must stay calm. She tells him not to be scared of a few nobodies, since he can use magic, which they can't. She tells him to just watch for now, and he nods silently, so Lord Darius agrees to our boy's plan and sets the test for a month later, open to everyone in the house. Until now, Colin has to work as a lowly servant, but that's just perfect since it finally lets him read the magic book in detail. As Cornell walks down the hallway, he tells our boy that he really has a special gift for using words. He says the lords are keeping a sharp eye on him because his way of thinking is so different from theirs. He asked our boy to confirm if he truly served a noble before the slave guild bought him from a remote frontline village. As Cornell presses the knife against our boy's throat, he asks if it's just a coincidence that he showed up right when the Lord is hunting for a new successor. Our boy stays calm and asks if Cornell is trying to pin something on him, then reveals that the slave guild doesn't care about lies or trickery. They openly joined forces with a Viscount against the Prophet in just one match, and he challenged him to admit if he really thought the guild would let him off so easily while working for someone. Still suspicious, the butler admits the merchant called our boy just average, yet his moves prove he's a master of a far higher level, a rare talent since in the Empire only a few ever climb past the intermediate rank in magic or swordplay. Even within that group, only a few rare souls rise higher, for the nobles chase only magic and leave their swords dull, while the elite divine guards demand masters of both spell and blade. Cornell wonders if the merchant was lying on purpose just to get rid of him quietly. Colin tells the butler that if he were really a mole, he'd be aiming straight for the job of lord, and the butler asks what he means by that. Our boy says a mole's only job is to sneak into weak spots, which makes the butler roll the perfect spy disguise. From that position, he could easily steal the Lord's secrets without anyone noticing. Afterward, our young hero makes a simple offer. He will use his role as a servant to quietly hunt down enemy spies, and in return, he asks Cornell to become his trusted partner and help him fully. The butler warns him that if he goes through with this, all the other nobles might turn against him. Colin says that if the danger is high, the reward will be huge too, and since Lord Darius would lose his inheritance anyway if he fails, it's all worth the risk. Hearing that, Cornell feels satisfied and slowly sheathes his knife, though the butler remains puzzled by the kid's ambition, suspecting that such a good deal might just be a clever trap. Putting his worries aside for now, he tells our boy to follow him to his new home, the servant quarters. Cornell gives the MC a tour of the quarters and lets him pick out a spot that feels just right. He tells us that the madam sorted the servants into 3 groups. The top tier works straight for her, her husband, and her son, while the middle tier gets to live right inside the big house with them. The lowest ranked servant is locked away in a separate room, forbidden even from stepping near the mansion, where the butler explains his daily chores of chopping wood, cleaning up waste, and caring for the horses for just 3 copper coins a day. Before he leaves, he reminds everyone that the most important rule is to obey every senior servant without question. The MC glanced over and saw that most of the servants looked like tough guys rather than honest workers, making him wonder if he was really supposed to listen to people like them. Cornell calmly tells us that the madam herself wrote these rules. The MC takes the deal with no fuss, greets the other servants, and says he can't wait to get to work with them. Instead of acting normally, the servants start laughing at him and sneering that he will soon be the lord of the land. One of them steps up and says they've heard about how the boy started a fight with the madam and her son. Another guy smirks and says he'll show him the right way to greet seniors. Then the situation gets dangerous when one of them smashes a bottle into a weapon. He commands the MC to kneel, slap his own face, and promise to work until everyone is happy. But as the others laugh at the humiliation, the MC grabs a thug's finger and instantly overpowers him, leaving the man dangling helplessly like a ragdoll. The other servants stare in shock as Colin kicks the man away, sending him flying across the room. Before they could even figure out what just happened, the MC calmly said he wouldn't hold back, started slapping the thug, and kept saying he was really looking forward to working with him. The other servants snap and charge in with deadly intent. Colin reacts instantly, flicking his sword to hit them right in the face with the hilt and stopping their charge in a split second. One of them stumbles back in shock, noticing his friend is now missing a tooth. Before he can even react, Colin is already moving again. He jumps forward and lands a sharp flying kick that sends another thug flying without a second thought. The second thug wakes up to find Colin waiting with his sword drawn, and when Colin calmly asks if he's satisfied, the man begs for his life before sneaking a second attack with a broken bottle the moment Colin turns around. In the blink of an eye, the scene changes completely. Colin stands calm with his sword ready while the thug falls to the ground without his hands, screaming in pain as Colin slowly puts his blade away and turns to ask if he is satisfied now. Night falls and the MC think Cornell has probably stopped doubting him, even though he can't guess what will happen next. Keeping that in mind, he opens the magic book and starts learning spells to get stronger. Colin remembers that after marrying Darius, Countess Katrina fired every servant of the Hall family and put her own people in their places, which only made her already broken relationship with him fall apart even more. To stay safe and keep a close eye on things, Darius picks his loyal friend Cornell to be his butler. Cornell is the only one powerful enough to fire the Countess if things go wrong and even help pick her replacement. The MC recalls that in his past life, Cornell was brutally killed, which let Countess Katrina seize power and force her own son onto the throne. He wonders if the butler had lived, their story might have changed, and Colin realizes his weak magic shield won't save him, so he must get stronger. He dives into mastering both the spells to defend and the ones to attack. Thinking about it, he grabs the book, and its pages fly apart around him like a wild storm. Feels like the story is pouring straight into his brain. In a split second, he is blasted by pain so fierce he freezes, feeling like thousands of ants are tearing through him, while his blood, bones, and soul seem to burn in a river of molten magma. A shadowy figure steps out of the book and shouts Colin's name. Then the next thing you know, it's standing right behind him, hissing that he should break, crash down, and give in. The MC feels crushed by the weight of it all and starts to question if this is really the cost of learning magic. He remembers a friend from his past life saying that all you have to do is close your eyes and let the magic flow through you to truly learn it. He wonders to himself how easy it must be for nobles to learn magic as naturally as breathing, and he clearly sees the huge gap their bloodlines create. Even though it's hard, he pushes through, puts his hand on the book, and promises to win no matter what happens. But just as he's about to finish speaking, something grabs his attention and throws him off balance, while the whole room suddenly fills with a spooky noise. The next morning, while the servants bustle about cleaning up, the thugs see the MC just waking up and one of them laughs at how calm he looks for someone who annoyed their bosses the night before, only for the MC to shrug and say, "I figured you'd stab me in my sleep," proving once again that he's still very much alive. Before they could even react, he casually added that trying to stop him would have been useless, then stretched with a tired yawn to explain that the grueling night of training had drained him. So he'd eat first before tackling work, and with a barely there shrug, he dropped the bombshell that all that hard grinding had finally paid off by unlocking a special kind of eternal magic. Before things get worse, the view moves outside the house where a group of guards is pushing people aside to make room for them to move. As the one-eyed lieutenant arrives, the servants bow their heads in fear and the guards shout for everyone to move aside. A servant, caught off guard while carrying a bucket of water, stands frozen in front. He doesn't duck fast enough, so a guard stomps on his belly and knocks him and the bucket flying sideways. Water spills across the floor and splashes right onto the lieutenant's shoes. The lieutenant halts and peers down at the stain. His aide screams at the servant for getting their leader's shoes dirty, but the lieutenant waves him off, steps up to the shaking man, and listens as the servant begs for forgiveness. The lieutenant gives a weak smile and admits there's nothing they can do, which for a moment makes it seem like he's forgiving him. But before the servant can even catch his breath, the lieutenant's face turns cold. He calmly says that eyes that can't even keep track of what's around you don't matter. In a flash, he rips out the servant's eye, leaving the man screaming in pain while the cold, one-eyed lieutenant stares back at him. The other servants stare at the screaming man with fear and pity, but the aide snaps at them, demanding they kneel as the MC walks right past them without slowing down, acting like the whole scene is nothing to him. His relaxed walk completely surprises the aide, leaving him frozen and unsure what to do, while the MC, lost in his own thoughts, wonders what breakfast to have since the servants aren't getting proper meals. The hurt thug instantly spots him and rushes to tell the lieutenant that this is the same man who cut off his hands yesterday, warning that the MC has been babbling all night like a madman. The lieutenant squints at the boy and decides he's probably unpredictable and dangerous. He shouts out, but the MC just stops, looks over without a care, and coolly asks if he wants his hands chopped off too, while the lieutenant licks the blood from his fingers and notes that his hands aren't like those of the soft nobles or the countess's people. So the other guards step forward and declare a harsh rule of retaliation where it's an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth, challenging the MC directly to ask if he will cut off his own arms or if they should do it for him. The MC stays perfectly calm, never changing his face, and simply replies with a cold counter-offer. He offers them a grim choice: drop their hands or drop their heads. The lieutenant smiles and says he won't be the one fighting him. Instead, he steps forward with a former slave arena champion and tells our boy that this is the one he will face. Colin instantly spots the guard named Daku standing right there and starts sweating buckets because he never expected to run into his best friend in such a tricky spot. Colin remembers him as the one friend he could always count on before everything changed. They once fought monsters together like old friends, but now that poor guy stands there looking battered and useless, just a low-level servant who's been crushed. Just as our boy grabs his sword, he taunts him by asking if he's really willing to fight for a loser. Daku lifts his sword and points it at Colin, saying he's just sticking to the rule that juniors must always listen to their seniors. Our boy challenges the logic, wondering if they aren't even allowed to speak while being treated this way, and his words catch the slave boy off guard for a moment. Colin uses that split second to grab the sword from his hand and sprint forward, leaving the lieutenant pointing at his throat while the others stand frozen in shock, unable to believe the boy snatched the blade right out of Daku's grip without him even noticing. The lieutenant almost peed himself but managed to stay cool while asking Colin if he really understood who he was getting mixed up with. He tells the boy that Lord Freed picked him personally, and going against him will bring serious trouble. Colin slowly pulls his sword back in silence while the lieutenant fixes his collar and demands that our boy get punished before he leaves. The creep then tells his men to teach Daku a lesson. Before he could even flinch, the servants swung their blades across his back and cut him open, drawing blood. He shouts that the man is nothing but worthless trash and orders his men to show absolutely no mercy. As they keep going, the minions make fun of him. He drove a blade through his own hand, screaming that this pain was his punishment for failing and losing his only chance to prove himself. Seeing this, Colin's rage boils over and he instantly slashes down both minions, severing their necks and killing them before turning to face the lieutenant. But the ugly leader grabs a chance to strike as Colin's back is turned, only to find his own clumsy swing cut in half mid-swing. Colin warns him that next time the blade won't just slice his weapon, but him, and right as he lifts his sword to strike, Daku suddenly steps in to block the attack. Daku steps in front of the lieutenant to protect him, standing his ground as a loyal guard who tells Colin to stop disrespecting his seniors and adding to his own sins. With his hand still bleeding from the stab wound but no desire to fight Daku, Colin lets the lieutenant go and tells all the servants to leave the area. As his old friend quietly sheathes his blade, Colin presses him, wondering why he won't fight back when he is clearly stronger and could have easily taken down those weak opponents. Daku snaps at Colin for being as good as dead and walks away in a huff, but when he saves the lieutenant, that same man immediately turns on him, shoving his head under the water and screaming that his silence made him look like a fool. The poor boy apologizes, only to be slammed hard onto the ground right after. One of the servants asks the lieutenant if he really means to let him go so easily. Hearing that, the man laughs and orders his subordinate to spread a rumor that the boy has declared war on all the senior servants, then commands them to strip him of his position and send him away into isolation. Colin asks Daku once more why he keeps taking all this pain without ever fighting back. But the poor man can only grit his teeth and stay silent, while later at lunch the senior servants feast on a lavish meal, and an intermediate servant gushes to her colleague about her dream promotion, hiding not a shred of excitement, even as the lowly ones are given nothing but a bowl of soup without a single complaint. Right then, our boy shows up and walks right up to the counter to grab something for himself. He glances around, puzzled by the way everyone is staring at him. The cook spills his soup, laughs, and says lazy people don't deserve a meal, but Colin just shrugs it off and struts straight to the senior servant's table, shoving them aside as he climbs up to eat right there. He steps up to the buffet and casually grabs a croissant and some chicken, only for Butler Cornell to step in and remind him that this special food area is strictly for high-ranking servants. The senior servants instantly shout for the butler to punish the outcast, but the head butler quickly invents a clever excuse to let him off the hook. He tells the story that the boy is brand new, so it's totally normal for him to mess up at first. He then asks Colin to follow him while the senior servants look disappointed, and as they walk, Cornell reminds him to obey the seniors but Colin argues back, saying the Maras themselves said rewards come from skill, not rank, and that he took the meal because he believes his own ability is enough to earn it. The butler agrees to pay for our boy's living costs, but only if the boy can find a hidden spy hiding somewhere on the estate. Just then, a signal was given to start the hunt, and the Marquis was seen heading toward the hunting grounds. It looks like strange things are happening in the deep dark forest, so the Lord is planning to go hunting and investigate the trouble at the same time. Just as Colin takes his last bite, a small grin spreads across his face as he thinks about the dark forest and plans his own trip there. The scene changes, and our boy is deep in the forest, hunting a black deer with glowing red eyes. He looses a burst of arrows and brings the target crashing down. Once he was done, he stepped over the dead body and started looking for the monster's heart. Holding the purple core, he remembers how these gems are treated as luxury treasures, usually cut into necklaces and other fancy ornaments. Having learned from a forbidden magic book that he can brew potions to restore his mana and boost his strength, he knows that a monster's core changes based on its rank, so the one from the lowly deer he just killed is only the lowest grade. The story jumps back to the time when Colin asked a divine guard named Cornell if he could walk into the royal hunting grounds, a place usually kept for kings, but now open only to special protectors because of the strange times. Despite Daku's angry warning that only nobles and middle-class servants are allowed to hunt, Colin insists on joining the divine guards to harvest the monster's core, and his risky choice just happens to turn out for the best. Colin acts like it doesn't bother him and casually grabs Daku's sword without even asking. He drives the blade deep into the dead monster and declares the prey now belongs to Daku, meaning there will be no trouble since Daku is just a humble servant. Daku snaps at the silly logic and wishes he'd never tangled with a lowly servant who only makes things worse, until our boy pulls out the head butler's dagger to show he's on an official mission alongside Colin to help investigate and even bring back some food. Kneeling beside the dead monster and glancing back at our unlucky boy, Daku lets out a sigh only to find the meat already missing, as the outcast has already started roasting it and invited Daku to eat, causing Daku to panic and scold him for forgetting that the meat belongs to the Lord and their seniors. Our hero insists there is plenty of meat and even pushes the other man to sit down and share a meal. At first, the poor servant fights back, but Colin reminds him that he only gets to eat once every 3 days and might not get any food later if punished, so Daku finally gives in. He couldn't stop himself from seeing and smelling the cooked meat right in front of him, so he immediately started eating like a starving man. As Colin eats, he presses his friend to explain why he keeps obeying weaker bosses just because they told him to, when Colin is clearly the stronger one. The servant shakes his head, saying strength has nothing to do with it. Instead, nobles are chosen by God to hold divine power, and if he keeps working hard and obeying, he might one day be reborn as a noble and receive that same blessing, just as he has already worked his tail off to rise from nothing to become a middle-class servant so his sister living far away can finally be proud of him. He warns Colin to stay out of his business and stop meddling in his life. He keeps talking about how lucky they are to be servants and just needs to do what they're told without asking questions. Colin then asks if he's doing all this just so he can use a little bit of magic. After hearing that, the servant dares him to take on the challenge of learning just one spell if he can. Colin turns to him and asks what would happen if he actually taught him how to use magic. The guy is stunned by what he heard and immediately asks if our boy truly has magic powers. Before our hero can reply, both of them jump at a sharp, painful scream from nearby. They quickly figured out that the scream was coming from the knights standing in the deep dark forest. One of them gets savagely bitten on the shoulder by a huge magic beast. Their leader shouts at his men to stay in line and keep calm when danger strikes, but he quickly finds out that yelling isn't enough to save them. Not when his men are getting torn apart by the beasts around them without mercy. A magical beast lunges at him, making him press his sword and shield against its snapping teeth, and for the first time in his long career, he realizes a pack of wild dogs is giving him real trouble. He pours all his strength into his blade and cuts cleanly through the beast's jaws, sending its lifeless body flying away. Suddenly, his assistant shouts a warning that 3 others are charging at him from behind. Knowing he's done for, the leader stands quiet and waits for his bad end. Just as they were about to strike, 3 arrows shot out and stuck deep into the beast's necks, hurting them badly and making them stumble. Suddenly, the heroes who rushed in to save the day step forward, looking calm as they ask if everyone is safe for the moment. Our boy checks out the beasts closely, noting they're called azure flames because of their fiery manes and tails, and he knows that hunting just one gives you enough meat and bones to keep you full for days. But his true prize is the monster's glowing heart, so he carefully lines up his shot to hunt down every single one before dawn. Colin jumps high into the air, pretending to be an easy target for the magic beasts below. Watching that foolish stunt, the knight's leader sees him as a madman walking right into a lion's jaws. But here, our hero is the real hunter who views the dogs as weak, so he shoots an arrow into 3 of them and lands smoothly on the ground. Thinking he was safe, a magic beast suddenly leaps out from behind to attack him. Time seems to stop for our boy as he calmly dodges the attack, then unleashes a mighty kick to send the giant beast back to its own world like it's nothing more than a tiny puppy, leaving every knight in the crowd stunned and amazed. Just like always, Colin stays cool and puts the final bullet through the beast's chest to finish it off. Not long after, magic beasts started creeping out of the dark forest. That ends up being a deadly error because he sends a storm of arrows flying, wiping them all out right then and there. The leader stares in shock as one lone warrior tears through more magic beasts than his whole team combined. But then a terrifying new power suddenly rushes toward our boy. He leaps aside at the last second, narrowly escaping a huge column of blazing blue fire that smashes down exactly where he had been standing. It came from a beast that looked a bit different and much bigger than the others. He knows what's next when he sees bright blue sparks sizzling inside its mouth. As its huge jaw snaps open, 3 fiery blue balls fly right at him, but he moves through them like an old pro and shoots back 3 sharp arrows of his own. To end the poor puppy's pain quickly, he drives his heel hard into its head. His kick is so powerful it drives the beast's head straight into the dirt like a startled ostrich. Just as he thought he was safe, an arrow whizzed past his face, reminding him that dangerous enemies were watching from every side. It turns out the attack was meant for a monster he didn't know existed, but Daku quietly warns him not to get careless in the chaos, earning a quick thumbs up from his friend while Daku sighs with that classic Sundra attitude, leaving Captain Glenn eager to learn which powerful lord these amazing warriors serve before Daku smoothly introduces them as backup guards sent by Marquis Darius's butler, Cornell. Glenn is shocked that their dynamic duo was saved by a reserve guard and a low-ranking servant, causing the royal guards to look disgusted while the lady wonders what Cornell was thinking to send old servants to help, and another guard mutters that being rescued by amateurs is truly embarrassing. Hearing that comment, innocent Daku still doesn't realize who exactly they are calling an old woman, while Colin uses the break to gather magic cores from the fallen monsters. Finally, he finds a mid-rank core to craft a potion using the magic book's instructions. A huge knight suddenly yells at him, asking who gave him the right to touch the monsters, but his captain, Glenn, steps in to remind them to focus on Lord Darius's mission and just let Colin clean up the bodies. Our boy looks at the big man, the one he's been calling a brat, and reminds him that he's the hero who saved them all, telling him that only a stupid jerk would talk back to someone who just helped them out. Angered by his answer, the man lunges forward, but the girl and Captain Glenn rush to stop him, revealing that he's actually Marvin, a name that instantly brings his past life flooding back. Back then, besides Cornell, Glenn, Marvin, and Sarah, Lord Darius trusted no one else. In a past life, those 3 perished on a mission deep in the Gloomwood, and after that heavy loss, Lord Darius slowly faded away. Our hero never thought he'd be the one to change their fate, but that memory made him silently vow to protect them from anything else ever again. As the tension thickens, Daku rushes to apologize for his partner, admits he's new and doesn't know the rules, and asks them not to take his harsh words too seriously. Sarah tells the wrinkly hags to shut their mouths again. Daku stands there in a total mess, completely baffled by her strangely specific insult that he just can't figure out. Glenn asks Colin if he's the fresh face who bragged about becoming the new lord. He admits he is strong, but warns that he will surely regret it later if he follows grand ideals that are too big for his current role. Just as Captain Glenn thanks our boy and heads out on his urgent mission, a massive roar suddenly startles everyone. Suddenly, a massive Azure King with blazing blue flames and a terrifying roar appears out of nowhere, freezing everyone in their tracks and shaking them with pure fear. Then he slashes with his claws, but they are so slow they can't even move a muscle to stop him. As Captain Glenn closes his eyes in fear that his squad is doomed, he suddenly opens them to find something so unbelievable that they can't even comprehend it. A lowly servant with no fighting skills stood in the way of the Azure King's attack, forcing Captain Glenn to wonder who he truly was. Colin, the Aura farmer, chimes in to remind everyone that he's the hero who saved them twice in just one day. When simple hits couldn't hurt the Azure King, our boy rushed in to smash the giant wolf with his special move, Mountain Crusher, but the blow was too weak to break the elite mob's tough hide. The wolf strikes back right away, his guard fails, his sword snaps, and he gets blasted backward. After taking that hit, he realizes he can't beat this monster right now. A regular sword like his barely makes a dent in it. Seeing this, the 3 royal guards rush forward to protect him while Sarah checks on our hero, and Captain Glenn warns us that the Azure King is a terrifying monster who has already killed many elite soldiers. The Azure King commands his minions to encircle the group and strike them from every direction. Marvin panics because now they have to fight the tough side mobs while the king is right there too. Our boy calmly explains that we should ignore the small puppets who serve the king, because all we really need to do is take out the king, and the rest will crumble without us lifting a finger. Captain Glenn can't believe what he just heard, but Daku warns that the monster has already slain many elite guards, leaving them with a broken sword and no clear way to win. Confident as always, Colin just says they should at least try it, leaving Daku to think he's gone completely crazy. Even so, Captain Glenn nods and insists they must fight together to survive, while Sarah warns that reaching the king won't be easy with his guards holding him tight. He smiles and tells her not to worry at all. Soon, a way will open up for them. Just then, the Azure King bellows loudly as the puppets charge in to attack. Colin stays calm and tells everyone to hold their ground while waiting for the enemies to get right up close. Before Marvin could even yell at him, Captain Glenn stepped in to stop the arguing and ordered his men to follow their hero's lead. Before leaving, Colin tells Daku to trust him if he wants to grow up to be a big brother his sister can be proud of. Then Captain Glenn yells that the enemy is right on top of us. Even then, he insists they must hold their ground and let the others move closer on their own. He waits until the enemies are right next to him before giving the signal to strike. First, he orders Captain Glenn to use his holy shield to blind them, then tells Marvin to push them back with the Heaven Shaker, and finally instructs Sarah to carve a path through the darkness with her phantom blade. Everyone does exactly what he said, and that opens a clear way right through the enemy's lines. As the captain battles, he wonders how anyone could know so many ways to wield a sword and other weapons. As soon as the opening is made, our boy quickly shouts at Daku to follow him right away. Sarah gives the little dog a pep talk to make sure he doesn't mess this up. Poor Daku is still confused as she keeps calling her that. Seeing their chance, Colin and Daku sprint straight for the king, with Daku asking what Colin plans to do as they go, and Colin explaining that since everyone is scared of the Azure King, they must strike hard to shock it before it can react. Daku is still confused about his logic and asks how they can attack the king with a broken sword, to which our boy replies by asking if there is any other way to fight without using a sword. Daku remembers the day he learned Colin could use magic, and now he's wondering if that cheeky boy can really pull it off to defeat the king. In the blink of an eye, Colin channels magic from his hands to power his whole body, unleashing a devastating attack called Ice Lotus that showers the Azure King with freezing shards, leaving Daku speechless as he watches it happen. The monster takes the hit, but Daku jumps right over it, lands on its head, and drives his sword all the way into its skull with a mighty shove. Our hero pumps his eternal magic into the attack to make it stronger. And then, just in the blink of an eye, the monster crumbles into dust as a brilliant beam of light shoots up from its spot, sending every tiny blue wolf scrambling into the woods in a frantic panic. As Daku stares in shock at the sudden quiet battlefield, the royal guards rush forward to check on everyone after the fierce fight. Captain Glenn sees the Azure Flame Wolves running away now that their boss is down, while Marvin wonders how they could have taken out such a huge beast alone. So Colin explains that their help made the whole plan work and that nobody could have guessed the result without it. Sarah stared at the piece of ice in her hand and started to doubt whether our hero really had the powers he claimed. Marvin tells Daku that the boy looks like the former captain, Marquis Darius Hall, who once led them in the Lionheart Brigade before they joined the Royal Guards. But Daku finally loses his patience when Sarah mockingly says the old lady's dog doesn't even know this. He steps up to her and shouts that he is Daku, not the old lady's dog, and demands she memorize his name while calling her a nasty old hag without hesitation. That remark hits too close to home, leaving Sarah speechless as Marvin stammers to explain that she's calling the Countess the old lady. Daku is stunned by the news, but before he can even think about it, Sarah steps right in front of him and asks why he thinks she looks old. She claims she is still at the peak of her youthful beauty, but Daku refuses to accept it, insisting she has grown old. So when she tries to deny the truth, he grabs her and chokes her without mercy. Our hero flashes back to a time when Daku and his friends used to laugh and play in a wild mess, but the noise of horses galloping closer pulls that memory away from him. The young master bursts onto the scene, startling everyone who immediately bows in respect as he explains that he rushed from the camp the second he heard the trouble. He glances at the dead blue wolves and asks what happened, and Captain Glenn says they were just exploring the dark gloomwood forest when the wolves suddenly jumped out and attacked them out of nowhere. He says they wouldn't have made it through that fight if Colin and Daku hadn't jumped in right when they needed them to. Fried shifts his gaze to our hero, who is so busy grabbing monster cores that he doesn't even notice Fried standing there, wondering why anyone would bother being here. Captain Glenn speaks up, noting the two of them have real promise, and asks if he can bring them back to camp to show the househead what they've done. Fried instantly remembers that Colin has already challenged him for the leadership spot, and realizes that sharing this win will put him in a terrible position. So as that thought takes hold, he looks at Daku and quietly starts to come up with his own plan. He steps right up to Daku, asking why he hasn't been seen around lately and noting that Daku hanging out with Colin makes zero sense, which instantly makes the air between them tense. He goes on to say that a lowly servant stepping onto the hunting grounds is a grave offense, and he asks if Daku really wanted to try forbidden spoils. Daku kept quiet while Fried called him a worthless man and warned that his sister Erika would be heartbroken to learn he had forgotten their past lessons. Colin steps in and declares that he still stands above a spoiled brat who can't function without his mother's support. He gives Freed a sarcastic greeting and calls him a failure. Sarah lets out a quiet laugh while Captain Glenn reminds her to stay in line and not make things worse. Freed gets mad at the insult, but Colin keeps talking to say people don't bow to Freed's looks, but because his mother is the queen. The whole crowd freezes in shock when Colin says that commanding people just because his parents are powerful must feel amazing. Freed tries to scare Colin by saying he could kill him easily, but Colin calmly replies that the only way Freed could do that is by running to his mom and asking her to get rid of a servant who is annoying him. Freed snaps, commanding his men to hold him down while chains bind Colin to his will, leaving an assassin's blade pressed against Colin's throat as the room holds its breath in sudden, deadly tension. The royal guards recognize the assassins as the Blades of the Empire, a deadly group of elite spies hired by the Williams family. Sarah says that even nobles tremble at their ruthless skill and wonders why the Countess trusts them with her son. But before things get worse, Captain Glenn steps up to ask Freed to drop it since the two servants came to investigate on the Lord's direct orders. Freed bites down hard and wonders if Glenn will fight back too, but Colin jumps in to reassure the captain that he's got his own back. He tells him to share the investigation findings with the head of the family instead. Sarah realizes Colin lets them go because he can't pick a side, so walking away is their only choice. Glenn pauses for a moment, but then he sighs, gives in, and walks away with the rest of them even though he's still upset. Freed turns to look at Colin, asking if he finally sees how completely helpless he is when his life depends on the young lord. Colin offers to let him kill him if he really wants to, but Freed instead pulls out his sword, calls for Daku to remember that actions have consequences, and throws the blade at him, challenging Daku to pick it up and kill the servant to make things right, leaving Daku stunned and unable to speak. After promising to let Daku go if he obeys, the tale jumps back 1 month after the demons arrived, where Colin is getting crushed by goblin-ogre hybrids. The monster lord has already taken him captive and laughs at him for being a pathetic savior. The demon lord hands Colin a sword and says he will let the captured humans go if Colin kills his friend Daku, who is also being held prisoner. Daku is already pushing his limits and barely holding himself together, while the demon lord watches in satisfaction, happy that he's forced humanity's so-called hero to kill his own friend with his own hands. With no other option, Colin reluctantly picks up the sword and plays along. He strides toward Daku, who starts talking and shares how the day his father died was also his sister Erika's birthday. Not long after their mother died of a strange sickness, the two orphans were captured and sold into slavery until Marquis Darius bought them. But fate was still cruel because he couldn't keep them together and had to send his sister away to the Williams family estate. Daku tells Colin that since the demons haven't reached his sister yet, he asks Colin to watch over her as his last wish, reminding her to eat well and to tell her that her brother was a mighty knight who fought for her until the very end. As Colin hears his friend's last wish and apologizes, the story jumps back to the present, showing both friends now standing in opposite roles. This time, Colin is the one bound in chains while Daku is forced to face his end. When Freed sees Daku hesitating, he asks why he isn't following his orders yet. Daku steps up to Colin's side and tells the Lord's son that they can't kill someone who just saved their life. Freed tries to play dirty by bringing up Erika again, warning him how she'll feel when she finds out her brother abandoned her for some random stranger, and he keeps provoking him with more claims about his sister. Freed shared a heartbreaking story about the Williams family's butler, who told him that a girl has been starving herself to save money for a sword for her brother, and she even collapsed from hunger just last week. The news terrifies Daku instantly, and he drops to his knees, pleading with the young lord to save his sister. Freed, who had tricked him into thinking he made everything happen, now tells him to go kill Colin. Colin bursts out laughing like a crazy man when he hears this. When Freed asks why he's laughing, Colin sneers at him for being a coward worse than a dog, dares him to kill him, and then suggests asking the Lord to let him and Daku fight to the death just for a good show. Freed starts to get nervous because he can't figure out what Colin is up to. He wonders if Colin fears the Empire's swords, so he decides to accept the offer and let him go just to see what happens. Colin gets his muscles ready while standing face to face with his best friend, just waiting to start the fight. Seeing his sword aimed at him, Daku pauses to wonder if Colin is truly serious, but Freed reminds him of his sister to push him into action just as Colin launches his full-force attack. Daku was caught completely off guard and got knocked straight backward. The MC springs back fast to launch another hit, but Daku blocks it and keeps asking why the guy keeps fighting back, until the MC apologizes and admits he just doesn't want to be the one who dies. This finally gets Daku into his fighting stance, forcing the MC to jump back and put space between them. The MC steps up and warns his opponent. 3 moves is all it'll take to end this fight. Daku can no longer stand her attitude, so he reluctantly admits he doesn't even need 3 moves to finish her, claiming he'll end it in just 3 seconds. As the duel heats up and the two rush toward each other, The MC whispers that he'll never leave his friends behind just as their swords are about to meet. This brings back a memory from Daku's past and makes him pause for a second. Daku knows the fight is just a distraction, so he plays along with his friend to stir up a big scene. The chaos makes a perfect gap for the MC to spring through and head straight for Fried Hall. But Fried steps in just in time and stops the sword with a burst of his thunder magic. As the MC laughs at him for finally showing some courage, the timid fighter gets furious and shouts that he can change his own diapers. But just as the Empire blades rush in, Fried yells to stop and holds them back. Fried is now furious and demands to finish the MC alone without any help, so he pulls lightning into his hand and prepares to strike, which makes the MC tense as his system senses a powerful magic source. Colin studies Fried's stats closely to see what he's facing, noting the opponent has no magic defense and his lightning is only average. Yet the system still warns that even this isn't something Colin can take at his current level. Seeing that, the reckless daredevil grins wide with interest, eager to test the truth for himself. He grabs the frozen ice in his hands and meets Fried's raging purple lightning head-on without even hesitating. The elements smash into each other with wild force, tearing through everything in their path. As a thick cloud of dust rises between them, Fried doubts his eyes are tricking him, since a simple peasant shouldn't be able to cast magic. Yet their first dazzling fight ends in a draw, which he believes. Suddenly, shards of ice pop out from behind the dusty cover, but he quickly zaps them into harmless water vapor. Feeling confused and a bit uneasy, he wonders where the ice is coming from. In that very moment, our boy laughs him to scorn, asking where his magic suddenly went, and with a glare that cuts right through Fried, he calls him nothing more than a failure. As the crowd watches, their jaws drop in disbelief when a low-born person survives a direct blast of magic from a noble. Daku wonders if his own eyes are playing tricks on him. While the young master sweats in fear, Amir's ordinary ice magic crushes his attack so hard that he desperately convinces himself it's just a cheap trick. With a mighty thunder spell roaring to life, the noble shouts that it's ridiculous to think a low-born person could ever wield real magic. Our hero wraps himself in a soft blue glow just as powerful bolts are about to strike him. But suddenly he gets a bad warning that his magic is gone, and his protective spell breaks right away. Mana exhaustion pins him to his knees, forcing him to lean on his sword just to stay standing. He finally realizes there is no way out and he is completely trapped. He clenches his jaw and takes Fried's furious purple lightning straight on, letting the nobleman pour every ounce of his power into an attack meant to finally put an end to the annoyance forever. As his skin burns under the scorching heat, Colin bitterly fears he will lose to the red-headed witch for a second time, so he refuses to let this new life end in misery and forces magic out of himself even though he has no magic left. A scary warning flashes on the magic book saying that casting spells without mana will make him lose control, but Colin doesn't care at all because he'd rather go crazy than drown in regret as his eyes slowly change color. Suddenly, strange blue and black flames wrap around half his body, turning his skin into the very monsters he once killed. Even the magic book can't tell what his real power is, leaving every single category marked as unknown. A wild, burning power crashes through him, leaving him dizzy with a pounding headache that makes it hard to think or even take a breath. Even though it hurts to keep going, the sharp-eyed warrior sees that Fried is almost out of energy too. He cuts down every noble's lightning bolt with one sharp, magic-filled slash. Fried stares in pure horror, having never seen magic this terrifying in his life. He stops dead in his tracks just as our boy leaps high into the air. As he drives his sword deep into the earth, huge chunks of ice shoot up from the ground, heading straight for Fred. The noble stays cool. Sure, his mid-level thunder spell is plenty strong to zap the ice right out of the sky, but it was too late, for the trick worked and his enemy slipped quietly right behind him. Colin creeps up like a seasoned killer while Fried is too busy dodging a storm of sharp ice shards to notice him behind. Fred's eyes go wide with terror as his life zooms by in front of him. In a final, wild gamble, he barely escapes death by throwing his beloved horse in front of the danger to save himself. He stumbled to a halt on feet that had never walked on grass. Our hero keeps glowing with a powerful, endless blue magic. The noble sees his foe struggling to breathe and knows he is one step away from falling apart from sheer exhaustion. He thrusts his palm forward, unleashing a blade of crackling lightning magic known as the Chidori blade. Our boy slices through the crackling sparks without a shred of fear, shouting that it's finally time to end their wild fight. Just as Fried's blade inches away from the young master's pale face, he realizes his mom can't save him, so he jumps back and closes his tight eyes, expecting a bad end, only for a bright golden magic circle to suddenly pop up and save him from getting skewered like a sweet Turkish delight. It bounces Colin's attack right back at him, sending him sliding across the floor, and leaves both boys frozen in shock when the hero who saved Fried steps forward to order them to stop immediately. Lord Darius tells the boys that they are not in a rough gladiator arena. This is sacred hunting land, so he calmly calls for the pointless fighting to stop and says they should settle their duel properly and officially once they are back at the Grand House of Hell. Fried stares at his father, feeling just as much thanks as he does hate. Meanwhile, our hero watches silently, his eyes glowing with a dark, fiery light. As the final flicker of his wild magic fades away, he collapses to his knees, completely drained and slowly coming back to himself. The Lord stares in shock and worry as he feels a strange, faint magic rising from him. Colin realizes the danger has passed and finally relaxes, only to freeze and lose consciousness right there. A few days go by before he wakes up to find himself in a soft bed inside the Hall mansion, only to feel that same burning sensation of the demonic magic returning to his body. He suddenly springs up in bed to look at himself. Luckily, he's back to normal-looking himself, and while he's secretly relieved he didn't turn into a horned monster, a kind voice nearby is just happy to see him finally awake. My guy turns right to see a zombie like Daku who looks like he's been in a coma for 5 whole days. After the poor guy rushed to explain how he blacked out, got slapped by Sarah, and was carried by Captain Glenn to the mansion, he still can't quite believe the crazy story. But he feels better than ever and invites Daku to join him for breakfast so he can thank Sarah properly. Even though he can't forget Daku honoring their sacred brotherhood code, he thanks his friend with a cheeky grin. Daku acts like it's no big deal, but he's secretly thrilled to hear Colin say, "Thank you." Later in town, the other servants began to tremble with fear as our hero walked past them. He gives them a funny, suspicious look, not knowing if there's something weird sticking to his face. He catches a few maids whispering wild rumors about his brutal fight with Fried. He crept up quietly to the ladies, leaped to scare them, then politely asked what they'd been saying about him, but they were so frightened they ran away without a second thought. Daku can't figure out why all the women are acting like they just spotted a ghost. Sherlock sees his friend's pale face and guesses he's scared of looking like a dead zombie, which makes Daku angry since he was the one who kept him awake for 4 nights straight. Not liking Daku's sudden change in attitude, he shouts that he never asked for him to be his personal nurse, just as Lieutenant Hairloss arrives with his crew to openly mock the future Lord of House Hall. Angry at being interrupted, the boys chant together to tell the idiot it's not the time, and somehow make him apologize for nothing. After a full second of stunned silence, the lieutenant snaps that he's here today to take revenge for the shame he endured just days ago. Frustrated by the old man's constant whining and his weak excuses for losing, our boy storms right up to him, and the lieutenant, who thinks he'll finally teach this disrespectful kid a lesson he won't forget, is oddly sure things will be totally different this time. The man snaps his fingers and yells out his squad's name, but after a few silly seconds of standing there, he expects our hero to get flattened right then and there. When the lieutenant sees his men standing around like confused ducklings and asks if they went deaf, he knows that loud snap was the signal for them to attack. His soldiers pause before telling Big Boss Hairloss that their target is the very monster who once fought side by side with Master Fried. Daku chuckles softly, not surprised by their fear after watching Colin fight, while the lieutenant flushes red with shame and decides to jump in himself to save face since his soldiers are too scared to act. Just then, his gaze locks onto his favorite pawn standing in the perfect spot, so he instantly grabs him by the collar, drags him forward, and screams that he's a traitorous dog who betrayed his master. The lieutenant calls it a serious crime and decides to pass judgment himself. The brutish bully grins with glee at the idea of crushing his helpless underling, only for Daku to stay cool and stop the weak blow with a single hand. The lieutenant's arm shakes like a leaf, frozen solid in Daku's iron grip. Daku makes it plain that this piece of trash has no right to punish him. Then he casually whisks Lieutenant Hairloss away like she's a clingy ex who won't let him go. The man was so shocked he almost froze, stunned that his tiny puppy suddenly had the guts to disobey him. The loud shouting draws Captain Glenn right over, and he demands to know why everyone is making so much noise this early. Marvin and Sarah stepped right in behind him, both clearly annoyed that their breakfast had been interrupted. The lieutenant chuckles with smug pride, sure the royal guard will beat the troublemakers even harder than he could, while the greasy sycophant bows low before the guards and claims he was just doing his noble duty to teach proper manners to the disrespectful brats, with Jojo standing behind him. My guy gives a salute to Captain Glenn with a vibe that means everything is cool in the neighborhood. The lieutenant feels insulted that Marvin is so chill around his superior, but Marvin just shoves him aside and says he's happy to see Colin awake. As this happens, the lieutenant turns the color of a bruise, looking utterly lost. Right now, he's watching the territory's toughest guards laugh and joke with that rude kid as if they are best friends. For a split second, he tells himself this is all just a fever dream. With no other choice, he argues that it's shameful for a high-ranking guard to hang out with a lowly servant. Sarah drapes her arm over his rigid shoulder and flatly declares that the rules from the old crone Katrina mean nothing to her. She adds that his whiny voice really grates on her, so he'd better keep quiet or he'll end up with a second eye patch. After giving a gentle warning, our hero joins the royal guards for breakfast, turns back with a mischievous grin to apologize for embarrassing the boss again, and then the scene shifts to them celebrating his recovery at a nearby bar. Colin admits that after they saved him before, he already owed them a favor, and now he seems to owe them one more. Sarah shrugs and says she was happy to help because she can't stand Potato Head anyway, while Captain Glenn adds that he did them a huge favor back in the forest. With curiosity sparking, Daku asks Sarah if she has known the lieutenant for a long time. The lady gets hot under the collar just thinking about that smooth-talking jerk. Captain Glenn quickly shifts the talk away from that awkward subject to something he's been meaning to bring up. He wants the two of them to join his small group, which now only has 3 elite knights left. Colin keeps his cool while his friend nearly goes crazy over the thought that a guy like Colin could join the Royal Guard. Glenn stresses that this is a huge chance for them to get the special rights that only high-ranking servants enjoy. Our hero instantly rejects the offer, declaring he wants nothing less than greatness, which leaves the drinking party speechless until one drunk man scolds him for getting cocky, only for another to chime in that Colin must have used magic to defeat the young master and the Azure King, while the others stare in disbelief at how a former slave could possibly wield such power. The old geyser pushes hard against the kid, forcing him to explain. Colin thought to himself that he'd always known these guys would soon catch up to his secrets. With everyone staring him down, he's just glad he's ready with a fake story, acting like the master of making people doubt their own senses. Everyone is watching him closely as the woman is about to accuse him, even though Colin is terrified of their angry reaction, while the girl just thinks he's pretending to be some important person to scare her. Bro is still baffled while she's chattering on, clapping for her own knack for guessing his secret identity as a kidnapped illegitimate heir trying to take back his mansion and power, a wild guess that makes her friend wonder how this crazy person even pulled that off. And as for our boy, he just laughs. All he needs to do is nod along to help spin a new tale, so everyone believes he's telling the truth while Colin starts whining about how he was just a nobleman who lost his way and ended up in slavery. His fiery words stir such deep emotion that his doubting friends suddenly feel sorry for him, all while he promises to win back everything he has lost. Even though everyone else got tricked, the guy here is sure that simple lie couldn't fool Captain Glenn. Just as Bro's hopes crash, the old geyser jumps in to keep the secret and buys the story himself. Colin stays cool with the captain, who just wants him to hide his powers from the madam or the young master. Besides that, he mentions that the Marquis wants to meet Colin, so our guy heads off to see him as the scene ends. Glenn keeps his distance, thinking about the Ale City Colin made up as part of his story. As they move forward, the homeboy is still puzzled by how easily their story seemed to work in their favor, and he can't figure out why Colin would choose that particular city of all places. Our boy points out that the city is meant to be a mix of many places far from his home, making it hard to prove anything, and his past as a noble is perfect for him to trick people later. But that's not all. Dude Bro wants to ask about something else too. He hooks his hand and asks if Colin knows about the 3-legged crow, or if that's just a trick he made up on the spot to fool everyone. You see, when Colin saved Daku by slicing the fat monster's head right off, he told his sister she had to hear the message for herself. After those words, he kept cutting down the remaining monsters, but right before his blade could reach the boss, the sword froze as a heavy vaporizing magic held it in place. Colin stood frozen in shock as the monster jeered at him for even thinking he could win. Then Daku himself jumped in, found a perfect spot to charge, and surprised the monster before it could fight back. Finally, they both struck the beast down with one final blow, then tore it into pieces to serve as sushi. Daku got into a huge fight with our guy right after, calling him a waste for thinking he was better than his own boss, but they couldn't argue much longer before a bunch of extra fat and ugly orc demons jumped them. Daku chopped down a tree while screaming at Colin for his crazy move that could have killed the hostage, but Colin just said the monsters wouldn't have let the poor guy go anyway. Daku complained that Colin should have given him a quick signal before his big moment, but our hero laughed him off for even thinking sharing a plan was a good idea, so they started playfully insulting each other while everyone else just watched, completely confused. By the time it was all over, the only two people fighting were the ones who should have been on the same team. Daku then flashed his special sign of the 3-legged crow, acting like it was the coolest thing ever.